The Forgotten Warning. The Intergalactic Trade Summit buzzed with activity as thousands of delegates filled the massive hall of Station Nexus 7. The station floated in neutral space, a monument to cooperation between hundreds of civilizations. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that stretched higher than most skyscrapers, and the air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert countless languages into meaning. Ambassador Relina of the Thaxarian Empire adjusted her ceremonial wings as she approached the central podium. Her compound eyes scanned the crowd with practiced efficiency. As a representative of one of the galaxy's most influential trading powers, she carried weight in these discussions. Today's agenda focused on expansion, new opportunities in previously unexplored sectors. The head chairman, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Volmir, activated the holographic display. Star charts materialized above the assembly, showing trade routes that crisscross the galaxy like veins of light. "We propose extending Route Theta 9 into the outer spiral arm," Volmir announced, his bioluminescent body pulsing with each word. "Preliminary scans show 17 planets with exploitable resources." Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. Resource discovery meant profit, and profit meant power in the galactic economy. Relina found herself nodding along with the majority. This was exactly the kind of expansion her empire needed. Then, a voice cut through the enthusiasm like ice through water. "That sector borders the Forbidden Zone." The chamber fell silent. Every delegate turned toward the speaker. Elder Ambassador Cove stood slowly from his seat in the ancient delegates section. He was old, impossibly old, his form barely solid anymore. Energy-based beings like his kind could live for millennia, and Cove had witnessed more galactic history than anyone else in the room. "Elder Cove," Volmir said carefully, "the proposed route remains well outside Sector 847. We have maintained proper distance from the quarantine boundary." "Proper distance," Cove repeated, and somehow his voice carried sadness. "You young species think 50 light-years is proper distance from them. You think time has made it safe. You are wrong." Relina felt her curiosity spike. She had heard whispers about Sector 847 throughout her career, but details were scarce. The sector appeared on no trade maps, no exploration manifests. It simply existed as blank space, marked only with ancient warning beacons that predated most current civilizations. "Elder, with respect," said a delegate from the Corvin Directorate, "the quarantine has stood for 600 years. Whatever danger once existed there has surely faded. Perhaps it is time to reconsider these ancient restrictions." Cove's form flickered, a sign of agitation in his species. "You want to know about the quarantine? Very well. Let me tell the young ones what their history texts have forgotten." The holographic display changed without Volmir's input. Cove's own memory banks were interfacing with the system directly, showing images from centuries past. The assembly watched as the display revealed a blue-green planet, beautiful and thriving with life. "This was Earth," Cove said, "homeworld of humanity. 643 years ago, it was a member world of this very council. Humans were traders, explorers, scientists. They shared their discoveries freely. They were our friends." The image shifted, showing humans in various settings. They looked fragile compared to most species, lacking natural armor, claws, or enhanced senses. Yet their eyes held intelligence and warmth. Then came the Convergence Alliance. 9 species, driven by greed and arrogance, conspired in secret. They wanted human territory, human resources, human trade routes. They believed humans were weak because they chose peace over militarization. The display showed fleet movements, battle plans, encrypted communications. Relina felt her stomach turn as she realized what she was seeing. This was documentation of genocide planning. They struck without warning. 9 fleets converged on Earth. They bombarded the planet from orbit for 3 days straight. Oceans boiled, continents burned. 4 billion humans died in the initial attack. The images showed Earth burning. The beautiful blue-green world turned gray with ash and fire. Relina heard gasps throughout the chamber. This was atrocity on a scale most modern species could barely comprehend. The Alliance believed they had won, Cove continued, and his voice hardened. They began dividing human territory among themselves. They congratulated each other on their quick victory. They were fools. The display changed again. Now it showed colony worlds, human settlements scattered across dozens of star systems. And they were not destroyed, they were mobilizing. Humanity's off-world population survived. 700 million humans across 42 colonies. And what emerged from their grief was something the galaxy had never seen before. They called it the metamorphosis. In less than 1 year, humans transformed their entire civilization from explorers to warriors. Relina watched in horrified fascination as the images showed the transformation. Human scientists developing weapons technology at impossible speeds. Human engineers building warships that bent the laws of physics. Human strategists planning operations with terrifying precision. The Silence Wars lasted 37 years. Humans struck like ghosts. Their ships could phase through normal space, appearing inside enemy formations without warning. They developed weapons that could destabilize stars, turning them into bombs. They created viruses that could corrupt any computer system, any AI, any digital intelligence. The display showed battle after battle, fleets larger than anything in the current galaxy, all destroyed by smaller human forces. Planets evacuated as humans made their stars go nova. Species begging for mercy as their homeworlds fell silent. Of the 9 species in the Convergence Alliance, 6 are extinct, completely erased from the galaxy's story. The remaining 3 exist as small populations on reservation worlds, their technology stripped away, their history rewritten. Humanity did not just defeat them, humanity deleted them from the galaxy's story. A young delegate from the Pyrian Collective stood up, his scales rippling with disbelief. But Elder, if humans were so powerful, why did the war end? Why did they accept peace? Because, Cove said quietly, they were still human. After 37 years of war, after billions of enemies killed, after transforming themselves into the galaxy's apex predators, they looked at what they had become and were horrified. They had proven their point. They had shown the galaxy what happens when you betray humanity, but the cost was their own souls. The holographic display showed a massive assembly, similar to the current summit but larger. Thousands of species gathered, all signing a single document. The Treaty of Eternal Silence, Cove explained. Humanity's terms were simple. They would withdraw to their original territory. Every species would sign an absolute non-aggression pact. A quarantine zone would be established 100 light-years in radius, centered on Earth. No ship would enter, no probe would cross, no signal would be sent. In return, humanity would cease all military operations and return to isolation. Every species signed. We had no choice. The alternative was extinction. And humanity withdrew. They took their weapons, their technology, their very presence, and vanished behind the quarantine boundary. For 643 years, there has been total silence from human space. No ships leave, no signals emerge. It is as if they never existed. Volmer floated forward slowly. Elder Cove, with greatest respect, that was over 600 years ago. Surely the danger has passed. Perhaps humanity has even died out, leaving only empty worlds behind the boundary. Cove's form brightened suddenly, a flash of what might have been anger. Empty worlds? The warning satellites still function, powered by technology we still cannot replicate. The defensive platforms still orbit every approach vector, their weapons still tracking every ship that comes within sensor range. Something maintains those systems. Something watches from behind that boundary. And you want to poke it with a stick? The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates argued for caution, others for exploration. Relina found herself torn between curiosity and fear.
600 years was a long time. Perhaps humans had evolved beyond their warrior phase. Perhaps they had died out. Or perhaps they had become something even more terrifying in their isolation. Captain Draxus of the merchant vessel Silver Comet listened to the debate from the visitors' gallery. He was young for a ship captain, barely 30 standard years, and he had built his fortune on taking calculated risks. His crew specialized in finding resources in overlooked sectors, staying just ahead of the major corporations. He studied the star charts with professional interest. Sector 847 and the surrounding area were completely unexplored by modern standards. 600 years of quarantine meant 600 years of potential resources just sitting there, unclaimed. And the Forbidden Zone boundary was exactly that, a boundary. Nobody said you couldn't explore right up to the edge. After the summit adjourned, Draxus gathered his crew in a private conference room aboard the Silver.
The Awakening Protocol. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been ongoing for 6 hours. Ambassador Relina watched as delegate after delegate stood to speak, their voices rising in panic, anger, or confusion. The chamber that had seemed so grand during the trade summit now felt claustrophobic, filled with fear that hung in the air like smoke. High Chancellor Vordum, a massive crystalline being who rarely involved himself in day-to-day politics, had taken personal control of the proceedings. His form glowed with barely contained agitation as he addressed the assembly. "We have confirmed reports from 17 different sources," Vordum announced, his voice resonating through every translator in the chamber. "Over the past standard year, no fewer than 43 ships have approached the quarantine boundary. 12 have crossed it. We have been lucky that only one triggered a defensive response." Relina felt her wings flutter with shock. 43 ships! She had assumed Captain Draxus and the Silver Comet were an isolated incident, but this suggested something far more disturbing. Systematic violation of the oldest and most sacred treaty in galactic history. "Who authorized these missions?" demanded Ambassador Threll of the Korvax Directorate, his three heads speaking in unison. "The treaty is absolute. No exploration, no research, no contact whatsoever." "Nobody authorized them," Vordum replied grimly. "These were independent operators, salvage crews looking for ancient technology, resource prospectors hoping to find unclaimed wealth, scientists curious about what lies beyond the boundary, all of them willing to risk everything for potential profit or knowledge." Elder Cove stood slowly from his position. Even in the charged atmosphere, his presence commanded immediate silence. "You are missing the larger problem," he said quietly. "It is not just that ships have crossed the boundary, it is that humanity noticed. For 600 years, they have remained completely silent. No signals, no ships, no communication whatsoever. But now, they responded. They warned us, which means they have been watching all along." The implications settled over the chamber like a cold wind. If humanity had been monitoring the galaxy for 6 centuries without anyone knowing, what else had they learned? What had they seen? What had they been planning in their isolation? "We must send a formal delegation," proposed Ambassador Yarix of the Silenthian Collective. "Open communication. Explain that these violations were the actions of rogue elements, not sanctioned by any member government. Surely they will understand." "Understand?" Cove's form flickered with what might have been bitter amusement. "You think you can explain away treaty violations to humanity? You think words will satisfy them after we have proven, once again, that the galaxy cannot respect boundaries? Then what do you propose, Elder Cove? We cannot undo what has happened. We can only try to prevent escalation." "I propose we remember history," Cove replied. "I propose we stop treating the quarantine as an inconvenience and start treating it as the mercy it was always meant to be. Humanity gave us peace. They could have scoured the galaxy clean after the Silence Wars, but they chose isolation instead. That choice was a gift. We must honor it absolutely. Before anyone could respond, every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. Screens flickered to life, speakers crackled with static, and then a voice emerged, clear and precise, speaking in perfect galactic common. Galactic Council, this is Commander Elara Chen of the Human Sovereignty. We are aware of the boundary violations. We are aware of your current discussion. We are listening. The chamber erupted in chaos, delegates shouting over each other, some demanding the communication be severed, others calling for immediate response. Relina sat frozen, her compound eyes fixed on the main view screen, where a visual feed was slowly resolving. The image that appeared made her breath catch. A human woman stood before them, visible from the chest up. She appeared to be in her 30s by human aging standards, with dark hair pulled back in a severe style and eyes that seemed to see through the screen directly into the soul of every watcher. She wore a uniform of deep black, marked with symbols that meant nothing to modern species, but radiated authority nonetheless. "I am Commander Elara Chen," she repeated calmly, "Sentinel of the outer perimeter. I speak with the authority of the Human High Command. We have monitored 43 unauthorized approaches to our territory over the past year. We have tolerated these violations with patience. That patience is now exhausted." Vordum managed to compose himself enough to respond. "Commander Chen, I am High Chancellor Vordum of the Galactic Council. We deeply apologize for these violations. They were unauthorized actions by independent operators, not sanctioned by any member government. We are taking steps to ensure." "Your apologies are noted and irrelevant," Chen interrupted, her voice never rising but carrying absolute finality. "The treaty is clear. The boundary is absolute. Your inability to control your own citizens is not our concern. What concerns us is that the galaxy has apparently forgotten why the quarantine exists." Elder Cove moved forward slowly. "Commander Chen, I am Elder Cove. I was present when the Treaty of Eternal Silence was signed. I remember the Silence Wars. I remember what your people became. Please allow me to speak for the Council when I say we have not forgotten. These violations were the actions of a few foolish individuals, not a coordinated effort to test your boundaries." For the first time, Chen's expression shifted slightly. Something that might be recognition flickered across her face. "Elder Cove, our records show you have been consistent in warning against boundary violations. Your counsel has been noted. However, actions speak louder than words. The galaxy's actions suggest it has grown comfortable, complacent. It has been 600 years. Perhaps you believe we have weakened. Perhaps you believe we have died out. Perhaps you believe the old legends have become nothing more than stories. We believe none of those things," Cove insisted. "We have maintained the treaty faithfully." "Have you?" Chen's image shifted, replaced by a star map. Red markers appeared at dozens of locations along the quarantine boundary. "These are documented violations over the past decade. 117 total approaches, 53 actual boundary crossings. Your treaty compliance is deteriorating, Elder, and deterioration leads to eventual failure." The chamber fell silent. 117 violations? The number was staggering. How had so many gone unreported? How had the Council failed to monitor its own treaty obligations so completely? Chen's image reappeared. "The Human High Command has convened to discuss appropriate responses. We have 3 options. 1, we can reinforce the boundary with active defensive measures, creating a kill zone that will destroy any ship that approaches within 50 light years. 2. We can emerge from isolation and personally enforce the treaty through military presence. 3. We can trust that this warning will be sufficient and the galaxy will police itself properly. Commander, Relina found herself speaking before she fully realized it. I am Ambassador Relina of the Thexarian Empire. May I ask a question? Chen's gaze shifted, and even through the screen, Relina felt the weight of those eyes. Speak. Why did you withdraw? After the Silence Wars, you had defeated everyone who opposed you. You had shown yourselves to be the dominant military power in the galaxy. Why choose isolation instead of dominance? For a long moment, Chen simply stared. Then, surprisingly, her expression softened slightly. Because, Ambassador Relina, we looked at what we had become and were horrified. We had transformed ourselves into weapons. We had sacrificed our humanity in order to survive. And when the war ended, when we finally had peace, we realized we did not recognize ourselves anymore. She paused, and something ancient and tired crossed her features. My ancestors fought in the Silence Wars. They told stories of what it cost us, not just the billions who died on Earth, but what we lost in becoming conquerors. We were explorers, artists, dreamers. The war turned us into exterminators. When it was over, we made a choice. We would withdraw. We would give ourselves time to heal, to remember who we were before the betrayal. We demanded isolation, not to threaten you, but to protect ourselves from what we might become if we remained. 600 years is a long time, Threll observed. Surely you have healed by now. Surely you have reclaimed your humanity. Have we? That is the question, Ambassador. When I went into stasis,